My elderly uncle's caregiver convinced him I was after his money, turning him against me completely. She isolated him from family while emptying his bank accounts for medical expenses. After his funeral, probate court found very creative billing records. I'm Daniel, 36 years old, male, and I still feel sick thinking about how all of this started. How something as small as one woman stepping into my uncle's house spiraled into betrayal, lies, and a wound that feels permanent. My uncle Mark was 78, widowed, and stubborn in that proud old-school way. He wasn't senile, not at all, just lonely, and maybe a little too eager to believe people still needed him. After my aunt passed, I was the one checking in, driving him to appointments, fixing things around his place. He wasn't just Uncle Mark to me, he was basically a second dad. Then came her. Sharon, 52, female, his caregiver. She wasn't a nurse, just some woman from a local agency who started coming twice a week to help with cooking, cleaning, and errands. I met her once when I stopped by with groceries, and she gave me this smile that felt off. Too sweet, like Splenda instead of sugar. She leaned hard into that "I'm such a selfless helper" persona, gushing about how Mark was like family already. My gut didn't buy it, but I brushed it off. The shift was subtle at first. Calls from my uncle started going unanswered. When I'd stop by, Sharon would answer the door with this fake concern, whispering, "He's resting, it's been a hard day." Eventually, Mark himself started sounding distant on the phone. He'd cut conversations short, make little comments like, "I just need space, Daniel. You've always been so pushy." Pushy? Me? I was the one who dropped everything when he needed help moving furniture or dealing with bills. That word stung like a slap. The breaking point was the afternoon I tried to bring him homemade lasagna, his favorite. Sharon met me on the porch, blocking the doorway with her body. She tilted her head and said, "Daniel, he really doesn't need you hovering. He told me he feels like you're after his money." I laughed in her face at first because what? But then she doubled down, saying, "You know, he's very vulnerable right now. People in his position, they get taken advantage of. He's lucky to have someone watching out for him." It was like someone sucker punched me. My own uncle, my second father, thought I was trying to rob him. I demanded to see him, but Sharon's voice shot up so fast it startled me. She actually started crying right there on the porch, wailing loud enough for the neighbors to peek through curtains. She was gasping, clutching her chest like I was attacking her. And then, just like that, the door cracked open. Mark stood there, pale and frail in his robe, looking at me like I was the intruder. "Daniel, enough," he said, his voice sharp in a way I'd never heard directed at me before. "You've made this about money for too long. Sharon is family now. Please, just go." That moment gutted me. Lasagna dish in my hands, my uncle glaring at me like I was some vulture circling his wallet. Sharon sobbing theatrically in the background. And me, his nephew, the kid he once taught how to change spark plugs, standing there exiled from his life. I drove home shaking, lasagna untouched on the seat beside me, this sick certainty gnawing at me. I was losing him, and she was winning. After that porch scene, everything between me and my uncle snapped like a dry branch. Weeks passed where he wouldn't return a single call. If I stopped by, Sharon would either say he was too tired or flat out shut the door. I even mailed him a letter, handwritten like he used to love. But Sharon must have intercepted it, because I got no response. Then came the bank incident. My uncle had always trusted me with helping him balance his checkbook. That was our Sunday ritual, me sitting at his kitchen table while he pretended not to need my help, but secretly enjoyed the company. Out of habit, I stopped at the bank to check in with the teller I knew. She hesitated, then whispered, "He's had some unusual withdrawals lately. Big ones." I wasn't on his account officially, so she couldn't give me details, but the concern on her face said enough. That night I drove to his place determined to talk face to face. Sharon opened the door, blocking the hallway with her arm. "He doesn't want to see you," she snapped. Gone was the fake sweetness. Her mask slipped, and for the first time I saw the steel underneath. I raised my voice. I called out, "Uncle Mark, it's me, I just want to talk." For a second, I saw him peek from the living room doorway, his face full of hesitation. But then Sharon spun on him, wagging a finger like a schoolteacher. "Don't let him manipulate you," she hissed, loud enough for me to hear. "He's after your savings. You told me that yourself. And my uncle," he actually nodded, like she'd hypnotized him. That broke something in me. I tried stepping inside, but Sharon shoved me back with surprising force. She slammed the door so hard a picture frame rattled off the wall inside. I stood there on the porch, fists clenched, blood rushing in my ears, wondering how the hell I'd just been thrown out of my own uncle's house like a thief. The next escalation was uglier. 2 days later, a neighbor texted me a photo. Sharon standing in the driveway with my uncle, pointing at me while I sat in my car across the street. She was sobbing, clutching his arm, making a whole scene. The neighbor wrote, "She told us you're harassing them for money. Do you need me to call the cops before she does?" That message felt like a warning shot. She wasn't just cutting me off from my uncle, she was rewriting the story for the whole neighborhood, painting me as the predator, her as the protector. When I tried one last time to call, Mark's voice on the line was flat, rehearsed almost. "Daniel, stop coming by. Stop calling. If you care about me, leave me alone." I hung up and punched the steering wheel until my knuckles split. The man who once called me the son he never had was now treating me like a parasite, all because of her. And I swear to God, in that moment, I decided if she wanted war, she was going to get it. Don't forget to subscribe. It didn't take long before the money trail started showing itself. One of my cousins called me out of the blue, asking why Uncle Mark had canceled his yearly donation to the veterans charity he'd supported since forever. That was my uncle's thing. He'd fought in Vietnam, carried those scars, and donating every year was sacred to him. For him to just stop? That wasn't his choice. I dug harder. Through another bank contact, someone willing to bend rules a little for me, I found out Sharon had started submitting medical expense reimbursements. Thousands of dollars. Not hospital bills, not prescriptions, but vague things like therapeutic supplies, specialized nutrition, mobility equipment. My uncle never mentioned any of this. Hell, I knew his prescriptions by heart, and none of them matched those figures. I confronted her. Dumb move, maybe, but I couldn't stay quiet. I caught her unloading groceries from her car and asked straight up, "Where's the money going, Sharon? Why are you draining him dry?" Her face twisted. She didn't deny it, didn't even bother. Instead, she dropped the bags right there in the driveway, eggs cracking on the pavement, and started screaming. Full volume, high-pitched shrieking about how I was harassing an old man, how I was trying to steal from him. Neighbors came out. One even started recording. Sharon clutched her chest like I'd shoved her and staggered toward my uncle's door, yelling, "Call the police, he's threatening me!" That was the first time I realized she wasn't just manipulative. She was dangerous. She was building a paper trail. A week later, I found my car keyed from headlight to taillight outside my apartment. Deep, deliberate gouges. No note, no witnesses. But I didn't need proof. I knew it was her. The worst part? My uncle believed every word of her theater. When I tried again to speak with him, he came out onto his porch with a cane in hand like a weapon and told me to leave before things got ugly. This man, who once held my bike seat as I learned to ride, looked at me with suspicion in his eyes, ready to defend Sharon like she was blood and I was the enemy. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at my bloodied knuckles and my ruined car and realized she wasn't just isolating him. She was erasing me. Piece by piece, she was cutting me out of his life, his money, even his memories. And unless I found a way to fight back, I was going to lose him completely. The call came at midnight. Uncle Mark had collapsed. Paramedics took him to the hospital. My heart sank, and I sped there like a man possessed. When I got to the ER, Sharon was already at the front desk, her voice shrill but commanding. "I'm his caregiver. I handle everything. He doesn't want contact with Daniel." I pushed past anyway, demanding to see him. The nurse checked the chart, hesitated, then said, "He's listed you as restricted. Only Sharon's allowed." That gutted me. Restricted. She'd convinced him to put in writing that his own nephew, the one who drove him to appointments for years, was a danger. I lost it right there, yelling at Sharon across the waiting room. She broke down into her usual hysterics, sobbing about how I wouldn't let her care for him in peace. Security escorted me out, while she stayed at his side. From that night on, I couldn't get near him. Every time I called the hospital, Sharon's name was the contact. Every update went through her filter. When I tried visiting again, she stood in the doorway of his room with folded arms and said, "He doesn't want you here. Don't make this harder on him." I looked past her and saw him lying there, frail, eyes half shut. He didn't even meet my gaze. Then came the paperwork. Sharon had power of attorney. Somehow she'd gotten him to sign it weeks earlier. That gave her full control over his finances and medical decisions. It all clicked. The medical expenses, the isolation, the lies. She'd been lining this up from the start. The final blow was his funeral arrangements. Mark passed 2 months later. I got a 2-sentence text from Sharon. "Mark is gone. Funeral will be private. Respect his wishes." I showed up anyway. The service was small, sterile, like Sharon had scrubbed all traces of his real life away. No photos of my aunt, no old war buddies, no family invited except me and one cousin who ignored me the whole time. Sharon stood front and center, crocodile tears staining her blouse, soaking up condolences like it was a performance. I kept my mouth shut through the service, but inside I was boiling. Watching her clutch his folded flag, acting like she'd been his wife instead of his leech, made me want to tear the whole room apart. Then probate court opened the estate. That's when the real truth spilled out. The billing records Sharon submitted, Creative didn't even begin to cover it. $200 for mobility yoga mats, $800 for special breathing supplements, thousands upon thousands for consultations that didn't exist. And the kicker? A $14,000 charge labeled simply therapeutic companionship. That was my hook, my proof. For the first time, I had something concrete to fight her with. And standing in that courtroom, watching Sharon's smug smile falter as the judge raised an eyebrow at her invoices, that's when I knew this wasn't over. Don't forget to subscribe. Update. Wow, I didn't expect so many of you to care about my story. I read every comment. Some made me cry, some made me laugh, and a few honestly scared me with how far people wanted me to go. To the guy who suggested I accidentally back my truck into her house. Tempting. But no, I'm not trying to spend the rest of my life in prison. A lot of you said the same thing. Get everything documented. Let the paper trail bury her. Well, turns out you were right. Probate court cracked things wide open. The judge requested Sharon's records, and that's when her whole scam started to unravel. Her billing statements looked like they'd been written by a drunk improv troupe. One example, $900 for specialized hydration therapy. Translation? She bought cases of bottled water. Another one, mobility assistance for patient morale at $100. That one turned out to be Uber rides for herself. Even the clerk raised an eyebrow and muttered, "This is creative." Everyone in the courtroom heard it. Sharon's face twitched, but she doubled down, talking about how caring for someone goes beyond what receipts can show. And here's the wildest part. Some of my uncle's neighbors started coming forward after hearing what went down. One testified that Sharon had bragged about finally being appreciated for all the sacrifices she made. Another said she caught Sharon having packages delivered daily, clothes, gadgets, even a damn wine subscription box, all while my uncle was supposedly too sick to have visitors. The judge hasn't ruled yet, but I could see Sharon's confidence cracking. For the first time, she looked less like the saintly caregiver and more like what she really was, a parasite cornered under bright lights. Reading your comments gave me fuel, but also clarity. Some people said, just let the court handle it. Others said, she needs to feel what she made you feel. Honestly, both are true. Watching her squirm under legal scrutiny is good, but it's not enough. She didn't just steal money. She stole my uncle from me. She poisoned the last years of his life and made him die thinking I was some greedy vulture. That's not something you just forgive. So, here's where I'm at. I've started pulling together everything. Documents, witness statements, even the text Sharon sent me when she warned me to back off. The court will deal with her financially. But I've got something else planned. Something that'll rip off the mask she wears in public, the whole angelic caregiver act she hides behind. And when I'm done, she won't just lose the money. She'll lose the image she built her entire scam around. Stay tuned. After probate court, Sharon went from smug to vicious overnight. She must have felt her grip slipping because she stopped pretending to be the gentle caregiver. Instead, she came at me directly. First, it was phone calls. Late at night, her voice sharp and venomous. "You think you're some hero? You're just jealous. He never loved you like you think he did." Then texts, dozens of them, swinging between threats. "I'll ruin you in this town," and pitiful begging. "Please don't take away the only thing I have left." When I ignored her, she escalated. My car got egged twice. A brick through my front window one night, wrapped in a note that said, "Leave me alone or else." Police couldn't prove it was her, but I knew. That was my breaking point. She wanted war? Fine. I knew Sharon's whole power came from appearances. She painted herself as the selfless martyr who gave up her life to care for an old man. So I decided to torch that mask publicly. Step 1 was collecting witnesses. The neighbors who'd seen her parading deliveries into the house. The charity rep my uncle had stopped supporting because Sharon advised against it. Even the handyman who'd been denied payment because Sharon told him to bill it under medical expenses. I got statements from all of them. Step 2 was the funeral home. I called the director, asked if Sharon had booked my uncle's arrangements. She had, and she'd padded the bill with special caregiver tributes that made her the center of the service. I asked for copies of the paperwork, and sure enough, there it was. $3,200 for personal acknowledgement ceremony. She literally paid to have herself honored at my uncle's funeral. Step 3? Timing. The town's Veterans Hall was hosting their annual fundraiser, a big deal for my uncle every year. Sharon had already RSVP'd, probably planning to swan in and soak up sympathy as Mark's devoted caregiver. That's where I decided it would happen. The night of the fundraiser, I walked in with a folder under my arm and a knot in my stomach. Sharon was already there, holding court at a table, dabbing fake tears as she told some poor couple how she never thought caring for Mark would change her life so profoundly. I waited until the raffle ended, then asked for the mic. My voice shook, but I steadied it. I told everyone who my uncle was, what he meant to me, and how he'd been isolated in his final years. Then I opened the folder. I read aloud Sharon's medical expenses: $200 yoga mats, $14,000 companionship, Uber rides billed as therapy. I showed the funeral invoice where she literally charged my uncle's estate to celebrate herself. Gasps filled the hall. And then I delivered the knockout. Witness statements, signed and notarized. Neighbors, charity reps, the handyman. Every lie Sharon told, contradicted in black and white. When I looked up, Sharon's face was drained of color. She tried to stand, but people were already turning on her. Whispers, stares, one woman outright saying, "You disgust me." Sharon bolted for the door before I could finish. And in that moment, I finally felt like I'd cracked her armor. The fundraiser changed everything. Word spread fast. Neighbors talked, veterans shared the story, and soon people who had once pitied Sharon now crossed the street to avoid her. She went from angel to parasite overnight. But Sharon didn't disappear quietly. She snapped. 3 nights after the fundraiser, I woke up to pounding on my door. Sharon, drunk, screaming my name at 2 a.m. I opened the blinds just enough to see her in the yard, mascara streaked, waving her arms like a maniac. "You ruined me. He was all I had, and you took it away," she shrieked, before hurling a bottle at my porch light, shattering it. I called the cops. By the time they arrived, she was gone. But that was just the start. The next morning, I found spray paint across my car hood. Thief. My tires slashed 2 days later. At work, someone started calling my office phone nonstop, leaving voicemails of heavy breathing and muttered curses. I didn't need a detective to know who it was. What made it worse? She tried to twist the story back in her favor. Sharon filed a harassment complaint against me, claiming I'd been stalking and threatening her. She even dragged one of my cousins into it, saying I'd brainwashed him to lie about the bills. For a moment, I actually worried she might sway people again. She was that good at crying on cue. But the thing is, the fundraiser exposure had created witnesses too. People saw her storm out, saw the papers I read, heard the gasps. The Veterans Hall backed me. The neighbors signed statements. Even the police who came to my house were now building a file on her for harassment and vandalism. The best part? Probate court wasn't over yet. The judge had ordered a forensic accountant to go through every one of Sharon's invoices, and the accountant's early notes, leaked to me by the clerk, were brutal. Phrases like grossly exaggerated, fabricated, financial exploitation. Sharon knew it. That's why she was unraveling. The empire she'd built on lies was collapsing, and all she could do was scream louder as the walls closed in. One night, as I swept glass off my porch from another bottle she'd thrown, I realized something. She wasn't just fighting to keep money. She was fighting to keep the narrative. The idea that she was the saintly caregiver. And I wasn't done stripping that from her yet. Update 2. So, apparently my story's making the rounds outside Reddit now. A buddy texted me saying he saw a thread about the caregiver scammer who got exposed at a veterans hall on Facebook. Guess Sharon's 15 minutes of fake sainthood are officially up. First off, thank you to everyone who stuck with me through this chaos. Some of your comments had me rolling, bro, she's basically an off-brand soap opera villain, and others really hit home. One person wrote, she didn't just steal money, she stole your goodbye with your uncle. That one gutted me. Because yeah, that's the part that still eats me alive at night. A lot of you asked what happened after the fundraiser. Well, Sharon melted down. You can't make this stuff up. She showed up drunk at my house screaming about how I took everything from her, smashed my porch light, and spray-painted thief across my car. Cops have a file on her now. One officer even muttered, we've seen her type before. Control freaks who can't handle being cornered. She also tried filing a harassment complaint against me. Didn't stick. The Veterans Hall vouched for me, my neighbors wrote statements, and the police already had reports of her vandalism. That attempt backfired so badly that the judge actually raised new questions about her credibility in probate. Which brings me to the best part. The forensic accountant's report. Holy hell. Guys, it reads like a comedy script. Charges like $1,800 for therapeutic music sessions, aka a Spotify subscription. $14,000 for companionship services. I don't even want to imagine how she tried to justify that one. And a recurring $650 charge simply labeled special laundry. The accountant called it a pattern of systematic financial exploitation. The judge's exact words last hearing. This looks less like caregiving and more like theft under the guise of compassion. I almost laughed out loud in court. Sharon's face went white as a sheet. So, where's it headed? Sharon's days of playing Florence Nightingale are over. The estate's lawyer is already preparing a motion to claw back funds, and the DA's office has been notified. There's talk of criminal charges. And me? I'm not pretending this makes it all okay. My uncle still died thinking I was against him. That wound won't ever heal. But I promised him, whether he could hear it or not, that I'd protect his name. And now, watching Sharon flail as the truth swallows her whole, I feel like I'm finally keeping that promise. Some of y'all said revenge should be poetic, not just punishment. I think this qualifies. She built her entire identity on being the devoted caregiver. Now that mask is in ashes, and everyone knows her for what she really is. I'll update again after the final ruling, but let's just say, the end is in sight. The last probate hearing felt like a trial in everything but name. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, veterans, even a couple of local reporters who'd caught wind of the caregiver fraud story. Sharon strutted in like she still owned the place. Hair done, pearls around her neck, but her hands shook when she set her purse down. The forensic accountant took the stand first. He didn't sugarcoat it. Line by line, he broke down her invoices. $200 for yoga mats. $900 for hydration therapy, cases of Fiji water. $14,000 for companionship services, which the accountant flatly called personal enrichment. When he finished, he looked at the judge and said, There's no plausible medical justification for these expenses, Sharon snapped. She stood up mid-testimony and shouted, "You don't know what it takes to care for a man like that. I sacrificed my life for him." The judge banged the gavel, warning her to sit down. But she couldn't stop. Tears streaming, voice cracking, she pointed at me across the room. "He's the one who abandoned his uncle. I was the only family he had left." The courtroom went silent. And then my cousin, who'd stayed quiet for months, stood up from the back and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "That's a lie. Daniel was there. You pushed him out." Sharon spun, face twisted, and screamed, "Shut up! You don't know anything." Security actually had to move toward her, and for the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. The mask wasn't just slipping, it was shattering in real time. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it short. I told the judge about the isolation, the slammed doors, the night I stood on my uncle's porch with lasagna in my hands and got treated like a thief. I didn't even raise my voice. The silence in the room did the work for me. The judge leaned back, rubbed his temples, and finally said what I'd been waiting months to hear. This was exploitation of a vulnerable elder under the guise of caregiving. The estate will pursue recovery of funds, and I am referring this matter for potential criminal investigation. Sharon's legs buckled. She collapsed into her chair, sobbing into her hands. Nobody moved to comfort her. Walking out of that courthouse, the air felt lighter than it had in months. I wasn't celebrating. This wasn't a victory lap. But watching Sharon's empire of lies crumble in front of a packed courtroom, that was justice my uncle deserved. And it wasn't over. Criminal charges were still on the table. Sharon wasn't done falling. A month after that hearing, the hammer finally dropped. Sharon was indicted on charges of elder financial abuse and fraud. The DA's office moved fast once the accountant's report hit their desk. Her mugshot made the local news. No pearls, no careful makeup, just a broken woman in an orange jumpsuit. Neighbors who once pitied her now shook their heads when her name came up. The Veterans Hall officially banned her from all events, and the charity she'd cut my uncle off from announced a new scholarship in his name. The irony? The money came from the estate clawback, funds Sharon had tried to steal. When the court ordered her to repay nearly $80,000, she broke down in front of the judge again, wailing that she had nothing left. No one cared. The judge told her flatly, "That's the consequence of theft." For me, the revenge wasn't about the money. It was about pulling her mask off in front of everyone. She'd spent 2 years convincing my uncle I was the enemy. She robbed me of those final days with him, poisoned him against me, and thought she'd walk away draped in sympathy. Instead, she walked away in cuffs. I still visit my uncle's grave once a week. I tell him about the court, about how people finally saw Sharon for who she was. Sometimes I still get choked up, thinking he never lived to see the truth. But then I remember his folded flag on my mantle, the scholarship in his name, and the way Sharon's empire crumbled because she underestimated me. She wanted to erase me. Instead, she erased herself. And that's the sweetest revenge I could have asked for.